Aqui, ó.
Viu?
Oi,
Sil,
Gi.
tá escrito
Gi.
na sua tela Ana Yasbeck.
Ana?
Ana Yasbeck, você tem que mudar o seu nome de novo.
Aqui, ó. É porque você tá no computador
Fabi.
dela.
Não, mas é Vânia que tá ou Ana?
Ana.
Você tem que
Quem
ir do
é?
lado direito, vai do lado direito da foto, vai ter uns pontinhos, clica e põe renome.
Da minha foto?
É, do lado direito
É aqui mesmo.
vai aparecer uns pontinhos azuis quando você clicar.
Peraí.
Coloca
Olha lá.
Gi. Gi. Oi. Agora apareceu, né? É aqui que a gente vai ficar, né? Ah, então tá bom. Tá, ou. Eu vou apagar. Ó.
Pode ser com a esse pessoal, para dizer que o Bolsonaro não se interessou por vacina. O Brasil é
Hello, everyone.
Hello, François, good night.
Hello, hello.
Dr. Nader, welcome.
Thank you. I was just checking that the electronics is working, and obviously it is. So happy to see all of you.
Okay. Thank you one more time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. All right. Guilherme, you received my note that unfortunately I have to disconnect in an hour and a half.
Okay.
Please. Going out to have dinner with my wife because it's her birthday, so that's a priority.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I was dealing here with the technical part of it. Of course, we'll try to take the most benefit of your presence here without compromising your birthday dinner.
Thank you. Actually, I thought originally that it was 6 o'clock my time, but because of the time change, it shifted to 7. So that was the confusion, but that's fine. No problem at all.
Não. Não. Você consegue ouvi-lo? Ok. Então, dando boa noite aqui a todos. Eu preciso descobrir aqui onde tem um retorno aqui tardio, que eu ouço a minha própria voz. Ok, continuam me ouvindo agora?
Sim.
E quem não ouve sou eu.
Aqui tá bom.
Agora me ouvem?
Sim.
Ok. É que eu tenho um retorno tardio aqui no meu som com a própria voz. Então, estou com 2 sobrepostos.
Guilherme, não é porque você está no alto-falante e ao mesmo tempo no alto-falante e fone ao mesmo tempo?
Cuidado para não dar microfonia, Gui.
Não, mas não é.
Desliga um deles.
Não deveria acontecer isso.
I'm so sorry. Cuidado para não dar microfone.
Vocês me ouvem agora?
Sim.
Normal.
Okay. Então, agora
Eu estou te ouvindo super bem, Guilherme.
Eu
Aqui
que estou ouvindo aqui um delay da própria gravação, mas eu acho que agora normalizou.
Ai, que bom.
Ou nem tanto.
Deixa sem som.
Ok, eu quero agradecer a quem já entrou antes aqui. Temos o Dr. Tufi Suleiman, nosso presidente da MLB, Dr. Robert Nehmer, nosso querido Michel Alabi, Adélia Maluf, Ciro Guimarães, a Kika Tui.
Guilherme, o Ciro ele é do conselho da MLB. Ele é Abu Jamra Guimarães.
Prazer estar com todos aqui. Prazer, prazer. Beijo, Tufik. Beijo, Roberto.
Estou aqui vendo, tem o nosso... muito prazer.
Prazer é meu.
Seja bem-vindo, Ahla wa Sahla.
Prazer é todo meu. Prazer é todo meu.
Nós temos aqui um encontro de grandes médicos e profissionais de todas as áreas. Estou vendo aqui o nosso Roger Caran. Uma boa noite para você, Roger. Vai ser difícil ver todos.
Boa noite, doutor Guilherme.
Boa noite a todos que estão entrando. É um prazer recebê-los. O Guilherme, ele saiu da sala um momentinho, vai retornar porque teve um problema de som, mas em segundos ele está de volta. Obrigada.
De volta, me ouvem?
Que bom, Guilherme. Resolvido o problema?
Acho que sim.
Ai, que bom. Great.
Acho que sim. Nós vamos...
Guilherme, for my section, do you mind giving me authorization to share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. In due time.
Boa noite, todos.
Eu estou te ouvindo. Eu estou te ouvindo.
Mr. Carlos Azar, good evening. It's a pleasure to see you here. It's an honor to have your patronage tonight. Uma rede Chicane.
Guilherme, Gislaine, precisa liberar, o pessoal está na espera. O Jorge Calil ligou agora esperando.
Ok.
Por favor, libera.
Aqui o Ibrahim Ismael também, uma boa noite. Doutora Nelise Fayad, boa noite.
Boa noite, Guilherme.
Boa noite a todos.
Boa noite.
Estão todos liberados.
Deixa eu ver se ele entrou.
Doutor Jorge Calil está aqui. Uma boa noite.
Boa noite, entrei agora. Boa noite.
O Esper também já entrou.
Boa noite.
Boa noite, Abdala.
Boa noite a todos.
Boa noite a todos. Doutor Luiz também parece que está aqui, Guilherme. Doutor Luiz Fernando.
Estou aqui. Boa noite.
Esper Kawass, bem-vindo também.
Eu realmente...
Você não está vendo, Guilherme?
Dr. Luiz Fernando, boa noite.
Boa noite.
Peço mais um instante.
السلام عليكم.
كيفك مبسوط؟
مشتاقين.
O François Nader entende tudo.
Pode fazer a saudação em árabe.
Is it better like this, Guilherme? The volume.
Yes, it's okay.
Sorry. Yes, Ambassador.
Guilherme,
Yes, of course.
better than before?
I'm still having technical problems here. I'll leave once again and return, and we'll start immediately.
I don't know if you press this button.
Sim.
Boa noite a todos que estão chegando. O Guilherme está tendo um probleminha de som. Ele se retirou da sala, mas em segundos ele está voltando para ver se consegue arrumar esse probleminha. Mais uns instantes a gente já começa. Obrigada.
I believe the problem is solved. I apologize for the delay, and I think we may start now. Rapidamente em português, agradeço a todos pela presença, peço que mantenham por hora seus microfones desligados para que nós possamos ouvir Dr. Nader e os panelistas. As perguntas, por favor, pelo chat que se encontra disponível aqui, e teremos condições de abrigar as suas questões da melhor forma possível. Agradecendo, em primeiro lugar, a presença da embaixadora Carla Jazar. It's an honor to have Ambassador Carla Jazar auspicing this event for us tonight. We are very grateful to Dr. Nader for making himself available and presenting on such an important issue tonight. Thanks again for all the institutions involved, the panelists that will speak today, the Lebanese Brazilian Medical Association, always a partner of the Chamber of Commerce, and all present. Without further ado, I would like Ambassador Jazar to speak a few words to us tonight. Ambassador, please.
Good evening, everybody. Boa tarde, boa noche, senhoras e senhores. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight with you to the opening of this event initiated by the Brazilian Lebanese Chamber of Commerce, CCBL, and consecrated to celebrate the International Physicians' Day. It gives me an even greater pleasure to be here since this year's event, of which tonight is dedicated to Beirut. Allow me first and foremost to thank my dearest virtual buddy, Gabi Matar, for giving me the chance to be here tonight and reach out to CCBL members and public for the second time. Gabi's virtual friendship is in itself defeats the pandemic purpose. Gabi, it's always a pleasure to see you. I would also like to thank President Alfredo Cotet Neto for this event and commend his brilliant leadership of CCBL that have, amongst other accomplishments, earned him high distinctions. Senator, it's very nice to finally meet you. I'm also thrilled to get to know Dr. François Nader, whose contribution to science and global health, nonetheless the Moderna vaccine against COVID-19, elevates him to the rank of most inspirational figures. His achievements add up to the legendary list of Lebanese descent success stories. Dr. Nader, there are no words to describe the pride and honor that you Lebanese at home and abroad draw out of your attainments, particularly in the dire situation we are in. It heals our wounded hearts and fills it with hope. It deepens our belief that Lebanon's future lays in the hands of people like yourself. One last word before I finish. Of course, there is no timely or no more relevant topic than to talk about the corona vaccine for what it means toward health and sanity. To date, it remains the only hope for humanity. But also, there's nothing more empathetic than to brand this CCBL year of events Anno de Beirucci. It warms up my heart and that of my compatriots with a sense of solidarity and support. Isn't it Lebanon's best vaccine against despair and hopelessness? So thank you, CCBL and its leadership, for your thoughtfulness, grace, and generosity. I shall remain indebted to you. Have a great event.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellency. It's an honor again to have you here and open this event. I will give the floor directly to our immediate friend, instant friend, Dr. François Nader. Dr. Nader, please.
You're on mute.
Yeah, being on mute doesn't help very much, does it? So I was saying that thank you everyone for being here. And even though I don't speak Portuguese, I can read. And just reading your names, it gives me the absolute impression of being in Beirut. I see the SCAF and the Shikani and everyone else. I mean, it's pretty amazing to be among our friends. And Renata said it the best probably when she invited me. She said, you will be among your brothers and sisters and we share the same roots. And I cannot, this cannot be more true, actually. Madam Ambassador, thank you for your kind words. It's a privilege for me to be here. Thank you for your contribution to the Lebanese community in Brazil, everything you do in extremely difficult circumstances for different reasons, both in Brazil and in Lebanon. So I cannot thank you enough for your dedication to Lebanon and to Brazil and the tie you're doing between our two countries. Thank you, Mr. Matar, for inviting me, and Ms. Abelam as well. It is a pleasure. The theme that I want to share with you today was given to me, and frankly, it gave me some thoughts. And it is how do we intersect? How do we put together my background as an immigrant, like all of us on this call today, and COVID vaccine? Okay, how does it work? And frankly, it was an interesting theme that I did not think about until I was asked the question. And as I will share with you in a minute, I found a lot of intersections between these two absolutely, completely different words. And
you're on mute again.
it flips to mute for some reason. Someone doesn't want to hear me here. At any rate,
I want to hear.
So yeah, this is so my story with the vaccine started. This is the first intersection between vaccine and immigration, because we left Lebanon, my family and I, back in '83, a long time ago, and our first stop was in France. And I was a young doctor back then with a wife and a kid, and we had to leave Lebanon for obvious reasons, and we landed in France. And my first job actually was given to me in the vaccine business at the Pasteur Institute. And it was an amazing opportunity because frankly, like many immigrants, I showed up in France with limited contacts, did not know a lot of people. And this individual actually recognized that Lebanon was going through a terrible, terrible situation back then, and offered me a position with the Pasteur Institute. And this was frankly the beginning of my career, the beginning of my journey. And I had the privilege back then to be, again, front and center in launching the vaccine against the hepatitis B, which was a big, big deal back then. And now years later, it's common practice. But back then, the Pasteur Institute launched this vaccine. It was one of the first, actually the first vaccine against hepatitis B. So I got to thinking, frankly, as how these two words intersected. And what came to mind is this first thought. I think most every one of us, having gone through what we've gone through, having left our country either this year or 50 years ago or 100 years ago, our family, ourselves, destiny has this very unique thing where it put helpers on our path. And these helpers, actually, I could not find a better word, believe in us for no good reason, and they give us a chance. And I was lucky to have this helper on my first job in France. And our first encounter, this individual, his name is Pierre Calius, actually shook my hand and said, I'm really sorry for what's happening in your country, and I'm here to help. And this was the beginning of a journey. So, I mean, probably my first lesson today, intersection with COVID, is I will never forget this individual back in '83. And I'm, for one, always very, very grateful, because along the way, as I was thinking about this presentation, I identified 10 people who actually helped me get where I am today. And I would really encourage you as friends to think also, take a minute to think who helped you to be who you are today, and just give them a thank you, whether it's a thank you in person, and if they're not around, just a mental thank you, and I'm sure they will appreciate it. So that was my first intersection with the vaccine. Now, between '83, now we are in December 2019, and something called Corona showed up, right? And just as a quick reminder, COVID-19, the name comes from CO because it's Corona, VI because it's a virus, D because it's a disease, and 19 is the year. And COVID-19, we call COVID-19 virtually everything. Actually, it's the name of the disease. Why? Because the name of the virus is very complicated, SARS-CoV-2. It's pretty complicated. But there is also a reason why it's named like this, SARS, Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome Coronavirus 2. And remember that this vaccine actually was named by the WHO back in February 22nd in 2020. Remember this date because it will come back. Now, if we think of the coronavirus, just as a reminder, and I apologize for the physicians in the room here, but coronavirus is very well known. Actually, 4 of them are the source of what we call our common cold. When we have sneezing and, common cold, 4 of them. Unfortunately, 3 of them are pretty nasty. One is SARS-CoV-1, right, which emerged in 2002, 2004, and infected about 8,000 people. Then people from the Middle East, we know that we had MERS back in 2012. And even though it was a big deal locally, it infected only, quote unquote, only 2,500 people. Now, SARS is the bad guy. SARS-CoV-2 was, and will continue to be, unfortunately, for a while, the bad guy. 120 million people infected and over 7 million deaths as of yesterday, okay? And if I were to take our 2 countries, unfortunately, we are in the lead. The US is number 1, Brazil is number 2, for all the bad reasons. These are not good positions to be in, with about 30 million people infected in the US, 500,000 people died, and in Brazil, about 12 million infected and 314,000 deaths as of by WHO yesterday, March 29. So this is not something to be particularly proud of, to be in position 1 and position 2. The good news in all this is COVID-19 has approved virus. It's the only coronavirus that has an approved vaccine. So let me walk you through the vaccine history, and I will give you a brief overview of what's available out there, and then I will zoom in on Moderna. So there are currently, let's see, 4 types of vaccine. We'll talk today about the Moderna vaccine, which is very similar to the Pfizer BioNTech. And this is the messenger RNA vaccine. And basically what it does, I'll show you in a picture in a moment, it actually teaches the cell how to produce the antibodies against it teaches the cell to produce the antigen and teaches the body to react and produces the antibody. You might have heard about J&J, AstraZeneca, Oxford, and Sputnik, the Russian. These are different because they put the genetic elements in a virus, and it is engineered to carry the coronavirus genes. The third type of vaccine is the protein-based, and this is so the vaccine contains the coronavirus proteins, but not the genetic material. And last but certainly not least, this is the old way of manufacturing vaccine, where we take the virus, we weaken it, and then we inject it. So these are the 4 types, and most every company actually gets into 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, it so very well happened, and this is where innovation is absolutely amazing, is, believe it or not, the mRNA vaccine were number 1, and yet it is the most advanced technology. So this is kind of the power of innovation. And with the power of innovation, I'd like to switch and talk about this guy, okay? You might or might not know him. His name is Noubar Afeyan. Noubar Afeyan is the founder and chairman of Moderna. And guess what? He was born in Lebanon, as I was, as some of you were born in Lebanon. He was born in Lebanon back in 1962. And from there, he went to Canada, did McGill, and then came back to the US in Boston, did a PhD in biochemical engineering at MIT. Now, this is the genius of our Lebanese DNA. Noubar founded his first company. He was 24 years old, so before even finishing his PhD. And he has founded over 50 startups since then, 50, which is pretty amazing. And he's a super nice guy, which makes it even better. Remember I said about a minute ago about helpers? He's one of them for me. Why? Because our path intersected towards the end of 2019, where they were looking, Moderna was looking for someone with my profile to serve on their board. Little we knew back then that it would be COVID. So when I spent a few hours with Nubar, I was very impressed by him, and I felt really that we can work together. So he was my helper along the way, and guess what? Luck had it that I joined the board of Moderna just literally weeks before COVID erupted, and I had the infinite privilege and honor and passion and to be front and center in developing the vaccine. Now, unfortunately, despite the genius he is, Nubar was never granted the Lebanese citizenship. And the reason is his mother was Lebanese and his father was not, okay? Unfortunately, as of today, the situation is the same. And I have my daughter on the phone here with us. She wanted to see how that presents. And we have a son and a daughter. Our son has a son, our daughter has 2 kids. That's kind of the anomaly of our system where his son can get the Lebanese citizenship. Unfortunately, my daughter, her kids cannot. Why? Because she's married an American, okay? So I don't know, maybe one day we can change this because it's so unfair to the woman, to the Lebanese woman, and it's unfair to our country. So something to think about. This being said, with Moderna, this is how it works. So Nubar found this technology at Harvard and MIT, put together a small group, and frankly asked another immigrant to lead Moderna. And the name of the other immigrant is Stéphane Bancel, coming from France, immigrated to the US. So when you think of it, Moderna was founded by an immigrant and was led by another immigrant. Yeah. And this is what immigration can do. So think about this process of mRNA as DNA being the storage. This is where the knowledge of our body is stored. The mRNA, messenger RNA, is the software. And the storage gives the instruction goes with the mRNA, and the mRNA actually, through a certain process, helps or triggers the manufacturing of protein, okay? And in the specific situation of corona, of the virus, it teaches the body to have the spike, this S spike that you see on this picture. And it teaches the body that whenever you see the spike, you generate antibodies. This is how it works. The beauty of this technology is most everything in our body functions through proteins. It is really everything, most everything in our body is protein-based. The minute you master this mRNA messenger, you can teach the body to actually manufacture literally any protein. So for a company like Moderna, frankly, the sky is the limit as to the applications in terms of vaccines, in terms of therapies, in terms of anything that you can think about. Now, let's zoom in for a minute here about how vaccines are developed. I will just look at the bottom of the page. It takes a long, long time, okay? So with the discovery when it starts, and between discovery and when it gets to human, it could take between 3 and 8 years, right? And then when it gets to human, you start with what we call a phase 1. A phase 1 is you test the product or the vaccine in healthy volunteers, and you look for safety. You make sure that they are doing okay. If they're doing okay, then you switch to phase 2. And phase 2, you determine if the product is safe, but also you start determining which dose is the dose that we will need. And so you try multiple doses so that when you get to phase 3, which is multi-thousand people, you test the efficacy, you test the safety, and it is what is needed to register any product, including the vaccines. So all these products takes years. And in my experience, having been associated with multiple vaccines over the years, it can take from a minimum of 5, 6, 7 years to a maximum of forever. And the forever is, you know, when I joined the Pasteur Institute back in '83, it was the big hype around HIV, okay? HIV/AIDS. And back then, the Pasteur Institute, despite its resources, said, we will have a vaccine in 5 years. This was back in '83. Now we are in 2021, and if you read anything about the HIV vaccine, it continues to say that we will have a vaccine in 5 years, right? And it has been, what, 25, 30 years since then? So developing a vaccine is not trivial, and it takes time. And this is the genius of a technology like Moderna. So look at this. I'd like to take you now a little bit behind the scene and show you a few things. On January 11 of 2020, the virus sequence was shared to the world by China, okay? So this is January 11th. If I recall correctly, I remember, I think it was a Friday, okay? So Moderna got the vaccine, the virus sequence on January 11th. 2 days later, over the weekend, 2 days later, the scientists at Moderna had finalized the sequence of the vaccine. 2 days later, what usually could take months and years because of the technology and the innovation driven by immigrants, right? The scientists were able to have the sequence in 2 days. January 13, the sequence is done. And if you count 3 weeks later, we had the vaccine in vials, 3 weeks later. And then another 2 weeks, we shipped our vaccine to the US National Institute of Health to run a phase 1, to try and see if this vaccine is safe in humans. So if you do the math, it took 63 days from the virus sequence to the first human dosing, 63 days. What you look on the slide, what you're seeing on the slide is the first in the history of humanity. It never happened before, ever, okay? And this is what makes my role, makes the role of my colleagues at Moderna absolutely an amazing journey, because I joined Moderna just before that. And on February 7 or around, we decided to create a COVID committee that would oversee everything, all the activities of the company related to COVID. I had the pleasure and the honor of being one of 3 people on this committee with Nubar Afeyan and another colleagues. So since then, we were really continued to be really front and center in the development of the vaccine. Remember the date of February 22nd, where WHO named the virus? Remember that? And if you look at the dates, the virus was named about 2 weeks after, not before, 2 weeks after the vaccine was in vials, okay? This is unheard of, and the rest is history. So in May, the first subject was dosed, and in July, we initiated our phase 3 with 30,000 subjects, and in October, we completed the enrollment. One more time, I will take you behind the scene and tell you something that you probably did not actually, I'm sure you did not read in the media. The biggest challenge that the team of 3 that we were and the management were faced with was, which dose do we pick? And let me walk you through the rationale here. In phase 2, we tried 50 microgram, 25 microgram, 50 microgram, 100 microgram, okay? And microgram is the dose, right? it appeared that 50 microgram and 100 microgram worked more or less the same. Okay. Now, if you think of a capacity that is limited and you go with a 50 microgram, you can make twice as much doses as 100 microgram. And therefore, you can vaccinate twice as many people, right? At the same time, if the 50 microgram doesn't work well enough, then you have embarked humanity, literally humanity, on a path with a vaccine that doesn't work very, very well or well enough. And this took a lot of thinking because on one hand, we wanted to make sure that the company and its production could help as many people as possible in the world. At the same time, we had to make sure that the vaccine that we will develop will work to the best extent. And decision was made to do two things. We went with 100 microgram and we invested a huge amount of money to build another manufacturing plant. And we decided to do it in Switzerland. Manufacturing plant number 1 is in Boston in the US, so that we can supply the world. So the decision of 100 microgram was a decision that was purely driven by what is best for the patient, not what is best for the company, because it required us to invest a lot of money and a lot of effort in creating another manufacturing plant. The story of COVID and the development of the vaccine was a series of critical decisions for a small company like Moderna that had to be taken day after day, week after week, because Moderna was a small company, continues to be a small company. We are not Pfizer, we are not J&J, we are not any of these big companies. We had about 500 people, never launched a product in ever. We developed, we're, small company in Boston. All of a sudden, we are front and center worldwide, working very hard every day, 24/7 a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the team to make sure that we have a vaccine available and every day counts. One of the things that was obsessive for us is the fact that every time, every day, I looked at the TV and they said 10,000 more deaths, 20,000 more deaths, 15,000 more deaths. And it was such a pleasure on us at Moderna because every day counted, every single day. And, it becomes really obsessive to understand that even if you shave one day out of this process, you can potentially save 10,000 lives. I mean, it's huge. Fortunately, it worked out beautifully well. We have about 30,000 volunteers that accepted to be in our study. Half of them were vaccine, half of them were placebo. And we were gratified by the fact that the vaccine, as you might have heard it, had a 94.1 efficacy at preventing COVID illness, including the severe diseases. And just to show you on a graph so this graph shows the placebo, the number of individuals who get COVID. And you see the placebo, the number continues to go up. Whereas after 2 doses of vaccine, the number of individuals who get COVID is flat, completely flat. And what is more important, or as important, in the vaccine in the blue group, we did not have any deaths, any severe. And that's something that we're very proud of. And our 100 microgram paid off because the serious adverse events were rare, and we had more or less the same type of adverse events, reactions between placebo, which is just normal saline that we inject, and the vaccine itself. And what played in our favor is the fact that the vaccine is stable for 2 years at -20 Celsius, but it could be kept up to 3 months actually in the fridge, any refrigerator. So from a distribution perspective, this made a gigantic difference in the distribution of the vaccine. Now that we have the vaccine and we know that it works, we have to go to the regulatory agencies like FDA and have it blessed by them, approved by the FDA. And it's an interesting challenge. Why? Because in normal times, having anything approved by FDA or any regulatory agency takes time, all right? So it takes about 10 months, and the priority review, so if it's really, really urgent, it takes nevertheless 6 months. And you very well imagine that we could not wait 6 months, okay? 6 months equal 180 days, and 180 days with 10,000 or 20,000 deaths per day, that was totally unacceptable. Fortunately, there was a way to do it. And the way to do it was driven by our Minister of Health, his name is Alex Azar, or Alex Azar in our Lebanese way, who happened to be from Lebanese origin, another Lebanese who helped with the COVID crisis. And basically, Dr. Azar determined that there was a public threat to the US, and the public threat, oops, I need to go back one. The public threat made it such that the regulatory authorities in the US would grant an approval for this product if the product is determined to reasonably believe, it will be reasonable to believe that the drug may be effective to prevent, diagnose, or treat a life-threatening condition. So with our results, it was clear that we passed, if you will, this level of scrutiny. And we were able to get the product, the vaccine, approved. So we submitted the emergency use authorization on December 1. On December 18, 17 days later, the emergency use authorization was approved, and we shipped the first vaccines to the US on December 20. So if you think about what happened in less than 1 year between the sequence of the virus and the vaccine available for public use, less than 1 year, okay? Now, if you think of it, it was a year too much, a year too long, but in the history of humanity, this was the record. Nowhere, no one ever was able to go that fast in putting a vaccine, a safe vaccine out there. And the safety was proven because now we have millions and millions and millions of people who received the vaccine and are doing very, very well. So my second thought here, my lesson learned, is if you look at the history of Moderna, it really shapes, you know, what we call our immigration mindset. This whole adventure started with nothing. I mean, the company did not have the means. Fortunately, we were helped by the US government, who gave us $1 billion to manufacture the vaccine. But without this immigration mindset of people involved who wanted to make something from nothing, okay, we would not have succeeded. Now, these opportunities are never easy or obvious. I had sleepless nights many times thinking whether or not what we were doing made sense, whether we were on the right track or not, whether it will result in something or not. So any of these decisions will take courage, it'll take resilience, but also it takes faith in oneself. And this is the core of what we are as immigrants, frankly. It's a representation of what we have done, what we can do, and what we will continue to do, right? And this is a message from Nubar. Nubar is an immigrant, And he said, when you leave the comfort of what you know, expose yourself to criticism, but persist, persist, persist until you make it habitable, palatable. This is what an immigrant does. So he was inviting people who are not immigrants, frankly, it's a representation to think of the immigrant mindset. And it's the kind of resilience, the adaptivity, all the things that we think are rarefied skills in an entrepreneur, that's every immigrant has to go through. And if you take a minute to think for yourselves or your parents or your grandparents who came to Brazil with nothing or not much, they persisted, persisted, persisted. I'm sure they were, you were, we were criticized, saying, what the heck do you know? And, but at the same time, as immigrants, as proud Lebanese, we have the resilience, we know how to adapt, we know how to make lemonade from lemon multiple times, and this is what we do best. It is in our DNA, okay? Sadly though, and I don't want to paint a too rosy image, we're not done. We're not done. The COVID battle is still ongoing. And very unfortunately, if I look at Brazil, this purple curve is not heading in the right direction. I'm very optimistic that we'll turn the curve, but for the moment, we're not going in the right direction at all. If I look at the UK, even at the US, you think that US is doing fabulously well. Well, we're not, because I don't like this plateau that we have seen now for about 4 to 6 weeks, because plateaus are not good, because the plateau is still there while we're vaccinating a lot of people in the US, as you will see in a minute. Now, Israel did a fantastic job, and frankly, that's a lesson learned for everyone else. But on the flip side, we can discuss how they did it and how they're doing it, but it's a small country and it's much more manageable than large geographies like Brazil, like the US, and other large countries. And what is complicating now our business, what's complicating the COVID story, are the variants. Some of them are covered very, very well by the current vaccines, like the UK strain. Some are less covered, like the Brazil one, where frankly, we're doing some additional work at Moderna and in other companies to make sure that we can cover it. So we, as of last week, launched a study with a new vaccine that is focused on the South Africa strain. So for the Moderna vaccine, Brazil is covered, UK is covered, South Africa is not covered. So we're starting this, what we call the booster dose. And we're here again, we're not taking any risks. So we're 3 shots on goal. We're starting a booster with the South Africa variant. We're starting a booster study with a combination of the South African variant and the usual, the primary COVID vaccine. And we're starting a 3rd booster with the regular COVID vaccines. And we'll see which one will work best. But it is clear that eventually we'll need a booster. We don't know how often that we will need it. Might be every year, every 2 years. Studies will show. Meanwhile, the good news in all this is we are, as humanity, making progress. And I was really happy to see that despite some of the curves going in the wrong direction, the United States and Brazil are next to each other, more or less, in terms of number of doses administered per 100 people. Is it optimal? Absolutely not. But we are, for both countries, much, much, much better than the word that you see at the bottom of the page or many other countries out there. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. Can we do better? Absolutely, we can do better. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to my fellow Lebanese at Moderna. We call it the Gang of 8. I introduced Nubar. I'd like to introduce Marcello Damiani. Marcello is the Chief Digital and Operational Excellence Officer. He's from Tripoli, from MENA, up there. And he has been with the company from literally its inception. And Moderna, with all its technology, relies a lot on machine learning and artificial intelligence. That is what enabled us to do what we need to do. And Marcello, his mom is Italian, that's why his name is Marcello. But nevertheless, he speaks Arabic better than anyone, and his heart is in Trablus, Elmina, and still there. His contribution has been terrific. Said Francis, he's our head of business development and corporate strategy. He's the one who drove the strategy of Moderna during the COVID, during the last year, actually, and did a fantastic job. Sharbel Haber is a colleague from Serene, Bilmatan. And Sharbel is, he's the guy who's driving our regulatory affairs. He is the one who is interacting with all the regulatory agencies throughout the world, actually, to help us have the product approved. Monique Joachim Turk is from Beirut, and she's our Director of Program and Alliance Management. Joe Sarkis, his parents are Lebanese. He was born in the US, and he's an Associate Director with us. And Joyce Kfouri Sousa, also Lebanese. Her parents are Lebanese. She was born in the US, and she's a Quality Control Manager. So I cannot be more proud, honestly, to have 7 other colleagues that work all together in advancing the COVID vaccine for Moderna, frankly, and making Lebanon proud. We need every piece of good news, given what's going on in our country. And with that, I'd like to leave you with a thought, going back to where I started. I talked about the importance of those helpers that we find along the way that really helped us, one person at a time, to get where we are. And we should continue to be always grateful. I also spoke about the need at all levels to keep and maintain the nurturing of our immigration mindset. This is something that is in our DNA as Lebanese, that makes us unique. And at the same time, these opportunities that we face in our life are never easy or obvious, but I know that every one of you got to where you are because of your courage, because of your resilience, and because of the faith you have in oneself. Now, I'd like to leave you with a request. And my request is, given where Lebanon is today, given even where Brazil is today, given where our Lebanese friends, family, brothers, sisters are today, my request to you individually is please give back. Each one of you can be the helper for those people who are not as fortunate as we are, and for those whose journey to success, journey to freedom, journey to fulfillment will cross yours. And I truly believe that giving back is key, absolutely key, to have this virtual circle of Lebanese throughout the world, and the success we have continue forever and ever. And I have a profound belief, this is my belief, the belief of my family, is you give one, the universe will give you 100. But now more than ever, please be the helper for someone or someone's, 1 at a time, 10 at a time, 100 at a time. And whatever you do, whatever we do, don't consider that it's not much, because the little thing that we can do as Lebanese to our Lebanese fellows could transform lives, literally transform lives. And this is, frankly, the message I'd like to leave you with. So thank you so very much for listening. And now I'll turn it back to you, Guilherme.
Thank you so very much. Of course, I had reference, I did my studying, I knew you were an extraordinary presenter. And we did our briefing just before this event, and we discussed the two sides of the story, the human side, the immigrant, the Lebanese, and the other side, the scientific one. And you presented it with perfect balance. And I'm sure Ambassador Jazar is moved just as I am and everyone in our audience with your final words. So at this time, I would like to invite our panel of specialists, Dr. Esper Kalas, Dr. Jorge Khalil, Dr. Abdallah Skaf, Dr. Luis Fernando, who's here also to contribute or interact with you as they see fit. Doctors, please.
Well, let me start. I'm Jorge Khalil. I'm a professor here at the University of São Paulo. I was so happy of hearing your presentation and your career, your journey is so interesting. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. And I hope you'll come to visit us here in Brazil. You know that we have a huge community in Brazil. And I think we participate very much in the Brazilian culture and Brazilian system, government and economy, and also in medicine, of course. I'm also, I think this story, when I give a talk in vaccines, I always present the Moderna achievement as a great achievement of mankind because it was so quick. I mean, in a few days, you were already in clinical trials, and we admire this very much. I'd like to ask you two questions. One is related to this Brazilian P1 that we are really worried. I think you have seen the numbers in Brazil since it started. It's getting more and more prevalent, and we have a huge rise in the numbers of diseased people beginning in March, I would say. I mean, there was a big rise in March again, and this is all dependent, I think, on P1. And you have said that the Moderna vaccine does work with P1. Do you have any data on the efficacy of the vaccine itself, or is this related to neutralizing antibodies? Because we have seen in some of the papers that the titer of the antibodies fall down for 2 or 3 times, and I wonder if we will have enough antibodies to fight disease. And the second question is, I know that Brazil took a long time in order to communicate with Moderna to buy vaccines, but we urgently need these vaccines in this country. Do you think you could help us in having vaccines from Moderna in Brazil?
So thank you, Dr. Khalil, and thank you for your kind words. You're absolutely right on the P1. The data we have are neutralizing antibody. There is a very solid correlation, though, between neutralizing antibody and the human, clinical protection. So we're optimistic. However, with Moderna, we're conducting some additional studies to make sure that the coverage is enough. If it is not enough, then as we did with the South African, I'm sure that our team, our scientists, will embark on developing a Brazilian the Brazilian variant, if you will. But for the moment, we are just testing to see if the current vaccine works as we predict based on the neutralizing antibody. So stay tuned is probably my answer. Unfortunately, I don't have a much better answer. The second question is the availability of the vaccine. Moderna took a stand because we're such a small company. We did not have a network of representatives. We did not have representative in Brazil, for example. Actually, we did not have a representative anywhere. We started creating this network literally a few months back. So the way we approach the distribution of the vaccine is through direct communication between governments and Moderna. That's the way it works. So many, if not most of the governments that got in touch with us got their vaccine. So it was a direct communication between the governments and the company. I'm not involved in those commercial things directly, obviously, but my recommendation would be if the Brazilian government is interested in getting the Moderna vaccine, they have to pick up the phone, literally pick up the phone and call Moderna. I mean, that's the way that presidents, prime ministers did. And they started calling us very, very early. I mean, we received the first calls literally in March of last year. And they said when the vaccine will be available, and they started reserving quantities. That's the only way, because our production is limited, you know. So most everything we currently have is already being assigned. This being said, we are in the process of setting up shop in Brazil. We are interviewing, we just hired a head of commercial. I spoke with her a couple of days ago about Brazil, and she confirmed that we are in the process of establishing a presence there. So here again, on the presence, stay tuned as well.
Well, thank you, Dr. Nader. I'm just asking you because we just changed the Minister of Health, and this Minister of Health is trying to revert the situation where we didn't have vaccines, and I promise to help him in these efforts. Thank you.
I really encourage you to encourage him or her to pick up the phone and call Moderna. That's the quickest and most efficient way of securing vaccines, from Moderna at least.
Very well. Dr. Esper.
Sure.
Dr. Abdallah. We have also Dr. Paulo Shapshap, the president of the Syrian Lebanese Hospital, with us tonight.
So my name
Hi,
is
my name. Go ahead, Esper.
So my name is Esper Calaz. I'm an ID and work at the University of Sao Paulo as well, together with my friend George Khalil, and I'm full professor at the Department of Infectious Diseases and Parasitic Diseases. I also direct a group of clinical trialists, and we've been running clinical trials for different vaccine candidates here. They participated in the J&J and also the CoronaVac. And there are a few more in the pipeline coming here to be tested. So now my question to you is in regard to the 63 days between the concept of the vaccine and the first injection in humans. This is a staggering and fantastic timeline. So is this the new normal? I mean, are we going to this new realm when we're going to give a vaccine from scratch in 2 months to people? And if you have any advice how we can go that path in the future?
Well, thank you, Dr. Kalas. And actually, you could have made the scientific part of my presentation much better than I would have done it. You're the expert, I'm not. Let me answer the question. It's a very, very good question. I will answer it this way. Moderna was founded 10 years ago. So the mRNA technology has been developed and improved over the years for the last 10 years. The COVID vaccine is vaccine number 7 that we developed. Probably the nuance there is no one vaccine reached the commercial stage. We have a bunch of vaccines that are still in phase 1 and phase 2. Okay, so the 68 is a worldwide record, but the 68 is the result of 10 years of hard work by our scientists and our investors who literally invested billions of dollars with a B in developing this technology. So with mRNA, the beauty is once you set it up, it's very easy, quote unquote, easy to work the sequence of the mRNA, you know, because it's like a Lego, you build it. but it has this whole machine behind it. So the reason we will be able to do the 68 days is really leveraging a gigantic effort made by the company in 10 years. To answer your question, is it the new norm? That's a very profound question, because part of the answer is yes, part of the answer is no. If, see, for example, we had the vaccine for the South African, again, in a matter of weeks, it was done, right? So if we replicate the same technology, we can, yes, have a vaccine very quickly, no question. But yet there are certain diseases, certain viruses that cannot use yet this technology. We have to go back to the more traditional technology that you're very, very familiar with, and this takes more time. So, but the future is here and we can do it. Can we do it every time? Probably not. Can we do it? So for example, our friends at Pfizer, I think it was Pfizer, announced that they're developing a vaccine for gonorrhea following kind of the same principle. So it's starting to emerge. Now, whether it will be successful or not, I don't know. But we're starting to do miracles here, thanks to, frankly, genetics, genomics, artificial intelligence, and putting all this together. So I'm reasonably optimistic. We need also to continue be mindful of safety. And I know that this was a very major concern that was also fueled by some politicians here in the US, at least, fueled by the anti-vaxxers. Now, thanks God, today we celebrated, you might have seen it on the slide, yesterday we announced that we delivered 100 million doses to the US. We have probably delivered 130, 140 million doses so far. So the exposure is huge. And if there were any short-term, medium-term issues, we would have seen them. But, you know, as a physician, as a scientist, my priority number 1, 2, and 3 is the safety of the people, especially when it comes to vaccines. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. And I would be careful, because the technology appears to be simple, not to have small boutiques showing up left and right and try to replicate what companies like Moderna or Pfizer or J&J or others are doing. That's a concern that we need to be very mindful of.
Dr. Nader, it's a pleasure to hear you. My name is Luis Reis. I'm of no Lebanese background. I'm from a Portuguese background, but I have the privilege of working at the Hospital Sírio-Libanês in São Paulo, which I'm very proud of. I think I would like to go one step further from Dr. Kala's question. And I think with all the brilliant work that Moderna has been done and delivering to the humanity, as you well said, are we ready to provide information to the cells to produce other proteins? And that is the beginning of a new era of treatment?
The answer is yes. At Moderna, we have 23 programs ongoing in parallel today, including in cancer. And by the way, you're Lebanese by osmosis, because that's where you work, so you get it. You're inducted Lebanese anyways, so welcome to the Lebanese club. So yes, we are looking at multiple applications beyond the vaccines. Some of them are a little bit more complicated than others. But again, just for Moderna, we have 23 programs that are ongoing currently in, among other things, in cancer. We have many programs in rare diseases where there is absolutely no treatment. So yeah, I mean, the minute you start knowing and mastering manufacturing proteins, the sky is the limit. And for a company like Moderna, it's not what we can do. It's really zooming in on you know, the priorities, because every day our scientists come up with a new idea. We cannot pursue them all. So it's opening a completely new avenue now in terms of medicine, in terms of prevention through the vaccines, in terms of treatment as well. So yes, the question is absolutely excellent question, and the answer is absolutely yes.
Dr. Adgal Iskaf, please.
Congratulations, François. was a brilliant, fantastic conference. I'm a radiologist. It's a little bit different from the others. They are infectologists, and I'm a radiologist, and I work at the HCOR, it's a heart hospital in Brazil, in São Paulo, which was founded by an altruistic group of ladies from the Arab community in São Paulo. And I work with telemedicine, the biggest group in telemedicine in South America. And I'd like to know, here in Brazil, we had some political problems with the vaccine. Have you had any political interventions when producing Moderna vaccine?
Listen, Moderna did not have the means to develop the vaccine based on the capital we have. So we leveraged, frankly, what the government had to offer, and the U.S. government, through its different channels, actually offered us quite a bit of help. Case in point, our phase 1 was developed with the National Institute of Health, and you might have heard of Dr. Fauci. He's becoming kind of a worldwide celebrity. Dr. Fauci was our principal investigator. Okay, and the relationship with Dr. Fauci goes back many, many years. So we have worked scientifically quite a bit with NIH. We have worked, frankly, hand in hand also with the regulators, with FDA, because FDA were learning, and we really worked as partners with them quite a bit, because they needed to understand the technology. They needed to understand how we can develop a vaccine in such quick time for a virus that was unknown. But at the same time, we learned from them what are the requirements. So it was a good partnership. Now, you all heard through the media the pressure that our former president has put on everyone, saying we'll have a vaccine tomorrow morning and blah, 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 blah. So this did not help, frankly, because it shed some lack of credibility about the vaccine, and frankly fueled, at least in this country, this movement of anti-vaxxers. I mean, I'm flabbergasted that still 30% of the health professionals are refusing the vaccine, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever, you know. And when you look a little bit deeper in those who accept the vaccine, you see, at least in this country, a significant percentage of Democrats accepting the vaccine, a significant percentage of Republicans not accepting the vaccine, which for me doesn't, again, make any sense, because anything that has to do with politics should not be mixed with public health. I mean, we're killing people. It's not a joke. So that's the unfortunate. Now, everyone was under pressure. Politicians were under pressure, government was under pressure, company was under pressure. And we tried to shield ourselves from the pressure because, as I said it a minute ago, our priority was to deliver a vaccine in time, but a vaccine that works, but more importantly, a vaccine that is safe. So it was not easy every day. I would not lie to you. Some days were really, really not easy at all. But at the end of the day, frankly, the common sense and science prevailed, and I'm very happy with the outcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yet again, before we move on, I'd like to mention that Dr. Ciro Guimarães mentioned that perhaps some questions that you've already answered or touched about the P1 variant and how soon can we expect to have Moderna vaccines in Brazil. Former Lebanese-Brazilian Medical Association, Dr. Renato Assad, is thanking you and praising you for the presentation. So is our good friend Elias Sfer of the Association of Bureau de Crédit. Same thing, Walid Al-Landare, and everyone is so pleased. I would like to ask one of the eminent doctors here, perhaps Dr. Chap, if would like to have a question for Dr. Nader.
I'm okay. I just want to compliment Dr. Nader and all the panel here, Jorge Calil, Esper Calas, Abdallah Skaf, Luis Fernando Lima Reis, for bringing some more knowledge to us. And I want to thank Dr. Nader and say that in Brazil, our women immigrants are very, very active in our programs of solidarity here in Brazil. And they put together several institutions in Brazil to recognize the good welcome we had here in Brazil more than a century ago. So I want you to know this story also. And I also invite you to come to Brazil as soon as you can and know our community here. And I think you're going to be very proud of us also.
Thank you.
And I compliment you for the achievements that you and your group and Moderna have had. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take this opportunity to reference Dr. Calil for a minute. He just sent me a direct message. So at the risk of embarrassing you, Dr. Calil, I should say a few words about you. The vast majority of the vaccines in the US, when they come to the finish line, are the data, all the data is given to a committee of completely independent scientists, physicians, who review the data for its efficacy, for its safety, on behalf of the FDA, on behalf of the company. So for example, and now Dr. Kelly, you might remember that, but we filed our data on a Friday to what we call the DSMB. We filed it on a Friday, and it was the worst weekend in my life because I was waiting by the phone and to hear whether or not we had a product or not, because you get to the finish line, and frankly, it's a black box. You dump these data on the desk of the DSMB, and then they give you the answer. And the answer was an email, a text actually from our CEO, Stéphane Bancel, say, we have a vaccine that works. And we got all very, very emotional about it. Dr. Calil has an intimate knowledge of this process. And the DSMB, so Dr. Calil, thank you for your contribution to this process, because you were the ultimate safeguard of making sure that despite the speed, despite politics, despite all the issues that I'm sure you lived since you've been associated with this since the beginning of phase 3, the ultimate yes or no resides in the hands of amazing scientists, amazing doctors, who really, their only objective is to ensure that the vaccine is safe and the vaccine works. So Dr. Calil, thank you for your contribution. Really appreciate it, and thank you for sharing this with me. Your role and the role of your peers has been amazingly important in ensuring that we have what we have today. So thank you.
Well, I thank NIH and Moderna for giving me the opportunity to follow this research. I must say that particular weekend that we studied the case and got the final decision, I went out and saw my wife, and I was crying, I must say.
Yeah, we all were emotional. So, because you never know, you get to the finish line, and frankly, when you wait for a test and you don't know if you succeeded or failed, it was exactly the same feeling at the dimension of humanity, So it was interesting. So thank you for your contribution. And by the way, this committee is completely independent from the companies, completely independent. We don't have any, actually, we don't know who the members are, to tell you the truth. They're completely independent. They're named by the regulatory authorities, and they do a terrific job.
I see Dolly Huri here is also congratulating you. And from your very amicable conversation, intimate, I would say, with Dr. Calil, we see that the Lebanese and the diaspora are helping the world in all the hemispheres at the same time. And we are so very proud of it. Just to repeat myself on this again, on the final part of your speech, you touched a message about solidarity. And I recently heard of it from Ambassador Carla Jazar, and if I may take the liberty to quote on her, saying we must take solidarity to a different institutional level. So, and you spoke to the very same effect. So if Ambassador Jazar wants to say anything about that.
To be very honest, I cannot be any prouder than what I heard tonight, what I saw tonight in terms of presentation, in terms of reflection of what immigration is, and particularly in terms of these helpers that came across your way and that should be remembered. I'm really honored and I'm really pleased, to have met you, Dr. Nader. You really filled my heart with pride, and it's an honor to have met you. I'm very happy to have met you all tonight. And thank you, Guilherme. Thank you, CBL, for this wonderful event. And you should be doing much more of these to make us even prouder. And thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for everything you do, as I said, in exceedingly difficult conditions, both at your current home and back home. And listen, and God bless your heart. I don't know how you do your job. I'm very familiar with the group that you know. I know you know here in Washington. And, I don't know how they do what they do. And it's pretty amazing. And something you need to know is, you might know it already, but our ambassador to the United Nations, Ambassador Amal Mdalali, led an effort with 17 other colleagues from the United Nations to issue a declaration about COVID vaccination worldwide and to make the COVID vaccination worldwide a public health emergency and urgency for the whole world. She led the effort. And again, the name of Lebanon was shining about a few days ago, literally a few days ago, when 183 nations signed the declaration led by Ambassador Mudallali. It was read by the United Nations General Secretary. And I would really encourage you to read or listen to Ambassador Mudallali's speech, because it carries the message that Lebanon is there to stay in good days and crappy days. And I can tell you, we were very, very proud here in the US and worldwide, because one of ours led this absolutely amazing charge to make sure that COVID vaccine will be made available to the world, actually. So here again, another reason to thank the diaspora and people who individually and collectively are making their best.
So we have words here from Mahit Shikani, Annelise Fayad, Laiz Yazbek, our dear friend Silvia Nasrallah, Robert Nemer from the Medical Association, Ricardo Maluf. So all people that are very excited about it. I would like at this time, if we don't have any questions from the doctors or from our community, to thank you immensely, because I think what has transpired here will in many ways reverberate. And you helped us giving a small step towards awareness about the immigration, awareness about the science as well. I would like to mention that these could not be done without the event being conceived by Renata Balem, our board of directors member. She conceived she proposed the idea of having this as the year of Beirut, in continuous support to Beirut after the August 2020 explosion. To Silvana Curi and to Gislaine Jabbour. They all did a marvelous job to make this possible. And before we can have you or leave you to your family dinner, we'll have a very, very brief ceremony, a tribute to those in the front line of the COVID battle, mainly those of Lebanese ancestry, who are sometimes the unsung heroes of these hard times we are having, in the words of no other than Renata Balem. Renata, please.
Boa noite a todos, boa noite, Dr. François Nader, agradeço por ter aceito o nosso convite. Como o senhor, a minha alma nasceu no norte do Líbano, eu sou de Sharta Erden, eu sou Kablan Frangi, e nós estamos fazendo esse evento para homenagear todos os médicos no Dia Internacional do Médico. E eu gostaria de ler um texto que é muito próximo ao que o senhor falou. Pode traduzir, por favor, Guilherme, o que eu falei?
Of course. She says that she feels just like you do, coming from the Frangi family in North Lebanon, very proudly from Sharta. And that at this time, she would like just to say these few words, which is the very tribute to the doctors and healthcare workers, but also something that comes together with the very message that you presented us with tonight.
Thank you.
Desde sempre fomos gente, e a certeza que temos desde sempre é que gente tem um fim.
Since always we have been people, and the certainty that we have always had is that people have an end.
Aliadas ao fim, as dores, e a humanidade, a despeito da imensa alegria que é viver, sempre as carregou consigo.
Along with the end, the pain, and humanity, despite the immense joy that is to live, has always carried them along.
Para a cura ou para aliviar a dor que nos é natural, criamos o sobrenatural e com ele andamos por milênios. Do centauro Quiron a Jesus de Nazaré, do profeta Mohammed a São Charbel, sempre nos valemos de quem estivesse ao nosso dispor, até que da inquietude do homem veio a ciência.
From the cure to relieve the pain that is natural to us, we create the supernatural with which we have walked for millennia. From the Chiron centaur to Jesus of Nazareth, from the Prophet Muhammad to Saint Charbel, we have always really relied on whoever was available, until from man's uneasiness came science, and then we surrendered to it completely.
A ciência retarda a morte e tira as dores. A ciência nos dá sobrevida, mas ela não faz por si só. A ciência é conduzida. Como prometeu na Terra, a ciência é feita por mentes e mãos, mas principalmente por almas inquietas.
Science postpones death and takes pain away. Science gives us survival, but it does not do it by itself. Science is steered. As Prometheus on Earth, science is done by minds and hands, but mainly by restless souls.
E as almas mais inquietas do mundo são as almas libanesas, almas da montanha, almas do Mediterrâneo, almas do começo do mundo, almas de imigrantes e conquistadores, almas de cedro.
And the most restless souls in the world are Lebanese souls, mountain souls, from the Mediterranean souls, souls from the beginning of the world, souls of immigrants and conquerors, cedar souls.
Hoje homenageamos a ciência, mas mais ainda, homenageamos as almas dos libaneses que, pela ciência, têm ajudado os brasileiros na luta contra um grande inimigo. Nosso aplauso aos imigrantes libaneses que aqui chegaram, formaram seus filhos e netos, e estes, pela inconformidade que é natural da nossa espécie, se transformaram em médicos e cuidam do povo desse solo que nos recebeu. Thank you.
Today, we pay tribute to science, but even more, we pay tribute to Lebanese souls who, through science, have helped Brazilians in the fight against a great enemy. Our applause to the Lebanese immigrants who landed here, raised their children and grandchildren who, given the non-conformity that is natural to their essence, became doctors and now take care of the people from this land that once sheltered. All these in the words of Renata Balé.
Thank you.
So I would like at this point to again hear from you one final message, hopefully just for tonight, until we have the privilege to meet you again.
Well, thank you for the privilege of spending a little bit of time with you. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I did, and it's so refreshing and so, frankly, emotional to see families, friends, brothers, sisters down in Brazil. And as I said when I started, it feels like I'm back home, you know, in Lebanon. I'd like to leave you with a message, personal message. So my grandfather's brother, his name was Philippe Nader or Philippe Abu Nader, I'm not sure, left Lebanon back in 1920. He came to Brazil. He had 6 or 7 children, and we lost track of him. And this was practically a century ago, right? And apparently grew a large family. And all I know is one of his grandsons, his name is Philippe Nader or Philippe Abi Nader, worked for a company called Siemens in Brazil. And that's our only connection. And I don't know where he is or not. So if you have any connection to any Nader or Abi Nader who have any relations with the Philippe, my grandfather's brother back 100 years ago, it would be good to retrieve and find my extended family in Brazil. I know it's like throwing a bottle in the ocean and hoping it will land somewhere, but you know, at times bottles land somewhere, so who knows? With that, I'd like to thank you all for this evening. Guilherme, thank you again for your kind invitation. Renata, thank you for organizing. Ambassador Jazar, thank you for staying with us that long. And well, inshallah, we'll meet very soon, and it would be great pleasure for me. Thank you.
Silvana Curi, at this time, she's saying and asking me to tell you that she's moved every time you say it's important to be Lebanese and do something about it. About the family origins, I'm sure we'll take it as our responsibility to spread it, and by word of mouth, you should find your long-lost relatives very soon, we hope.
Inshallah.
If you allow me, I have the contact with Philippe Nader in Belo Horizonte. I will share with you.
Okay, terrific. Please, please.
Not sure if he is your relative, but he is Felipe Nader from Belo Horizonte. He's just in the middle of Brazil, close to Renata.
Oh my gosh, wow. Okay, well, that's cool. Just send me an email or call or do whatever.
Okay, and we are very proud from you.
Thank you.
Dr. Silene Karam is from the southern state of Paraná, and she's the head of the Chamber of Commerce over there.
Thank you. I just put my email online here, so just shoot me an email if you'd like. Thank you so much, though.
Thank you.
Well, we are, it's hard to let you go, but we thank you again, and we'll leave you to a pleasant evening now. Thank you so very much.
Thank you all. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Obrigado a todos que estiveram aqui hoje. Obrigado mais uma vez, Renata, Silvana, Gislaine. Elas realmente fizeram tudo isso aqui acontecer. Obrigado a todos que nos apoiaram, a todos os amigos, que muita saudade de estarmos juntos presencialmente. Obrigado aos hospitais, aos médicos que estão aqui dando o seu tempo para estarem conosco. Estou vendo aqui na minha tela o Dr. Abdala, em nome do qual eu agradeço a todos, Dr. Calil, Dr. Esper, Dr. Paulo, Dr. Renato, todos os grandes amigos. Nós vamos fazer força para trazer mais experiências como essas e mostrar o quanto é profundo e importante ser libanês, ser descendente de libanês, e que razão para ter orgulho. Enquanto isso, continuamos batalhando nessa batalha contra a pandemia. Muito obrigado.
Guilherme.
Fala, Silvia.
Olha, foi muito bom fazer isso com você dessa forma, viu? Um momento tão difícil, a gente conseguiu fazer com muito prazer tudo isso. Muito gratificante.
Sem dúvida.
Eu queria dizer só umas palavras. Eu acabei de perder meu pai com a Covid. Não é algo muito fácil, faz poucos dias. E o orgulho de ser libanesa, o orgulho de ter esse sangue nas veias e ver todos nós reunidos aqui num evento desse, é o que faz a gente querer seguir em frente e pensar que ele estaria muito orgulhoso de tudo isso. Obrigada a todos vocês, espero que possamos novamente, daqui um pouquinho, trazer mais novidades e sempre honrando o nosso sangue libanês. Muito obrigada.
مبروك لكل حكيمة لبنانية.
Agla Wassagla.
Guilherme.
Sim.
Guilherme.
Adel, querido.
Boa noite. Boa noite, Guilherme.
Diga, Adel.
Queria parabenizar você, a Câmara de Comércio Líbano, Brasil e São Paulo, Dr. Nader, a equipe dele todinho, e a gente faz uma pergunta. Nós temos grande profissional no mundo inteiro, industrial, comércio, medicinal, de toda a área. Eles são todos grandes. E por que nosso país está nessa situação? Obrigado por tudo. Boa noite.
Essa é realmente uma pergunta difícil de responder, Adel. Mas nos leva a pensar, né? É para refletir mais do que para responder.
Boa noite a todos.
A palavra continua aberta a quem quiser se manifestar, por favor.
Embaixadora.
Se eu morrer. Muito bem. Então, agradecendo novamente a todos e desejando uma boa continuação de semana, de mês. Boa sorte. Até breve.
Abraços a todos. Boa noite.
Boa noite, Karine.
Não.